I'm Ariana Grande.
Hi, I'm Cynthia Erivo.
And you're listening to the Broadway Podcast Network.
Visit bpn.fm to discover more.
There's a cat over here. There's a cat over there. And the wrong one died. And the wrong one died.
Welcome to The Wrong Cat Died, the podcast breakdown of the catastrophe. I'm your host, Mike Abrams, and today we have another two amazing guests. They are the brilliant minds behind the incredible casting of Cats the Jellicle Ball from X Casting. So welcome, Victor Vazquez and Sujotta Pace, and thank you for joining me.
Of course.
Hi. Thank you for having us.
So excited to have you because I have loved how you all approach this, and I love that you're all sharing how you approach this. So we're going to get into that in a minute, because I always love to start this podcast with understanding people's cats' familiarity, because especially for you all with the Jellicle Ball, like it is a different reimagined version, but it's still Cats. So what was your introduction to Cats as a musical?
I mean, I remember watching it in a very dark lecture hall in undergrad, for one of those like theater history classes. That was my first sort of time, and just being completely not into it.
Yeah. So you saw the 1998 movie in school at some point, and we're just like, yeah, this ain't for me. Yeah. All right. Okay.
Yeah. For me, my introduction to Cats was the movie with Idris Elba.
Oh, it's a new movie. Oh, yeah, wow. What an entry point.
So that was my introduction to Cats.
That's so funny, Sujotta, that you saw it. I never actually looked at that one.
You still haven't seen it? Wow.
No.
Well, for me, because I had never seen it before, and I knew we were working on this project. So
and that's why you watched it?
I said, let me watch this movie called Cats and see what it was about.
I can't believe you went to that one first, though. Most people go to the 1998 movie. It's not a pro shot, but like it looks more like a pro shot.
Right.
When I started this, it was when the 2019 movie was coming out, and so it's kind of leading up to it. But everyone was like, "Go watch the pro shot version." And so I started there. I'm impressed that you started with 2019.
Yeah, I said, let me start with something a little bit newer.
Okay. And so then I want to hear when you heard this idea, because you all were involved from like the workshops and day one. What was that call like? Like, what was that introduction of just, hey, here's what we're thinking about? What, 6 years ago at this point?
Yeah, I think the offer officially came in like maybe end of 2021 with like a workshop maybe in November 2021 going into 2022. With the production being in 2023 at PAC, I believe. I mean, I was in the taxi cab, and Mayan Wang, who was a producer at PAC, when she called with the offer. It was just nuts. I mean, I didn't know what to think of it, really. I mean, I was just like, what do you mean Ballroom and Cats? And she said, I know, let me send you a deck. And so she sent the deck. I remember looking at it in the cab and be like, I don't know, sure, let's see what happens, right? Like, this sounds interesting, and I think the challenge was the thing that to me was the most captivating. You know, like what happens if you take these two things and you try to form a casting strategy out of it? That to me was the most captivating question.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think for me it was when Victor came to me and said, "Hey, I have this show. Do you want to co-cast it with me?" And he told me what it was. And I was like, of course, sure.
I don't think we knew what we were getting ourselves into, like, at all. And I think, like, had we known the mountain that it would have been at the beginning, it would have been really daunting, to be honest. But I think the fact that it was broken into steps, right? Because we didn't know it was going to be on Broadway. We knew there was a possibility. That's what we framed it at the beginning. And that's how it was framed to us. You know, that there's a possibility that this will have an off-Broadway production. Yeah. And so even when we first started auditioning, it was like, there is a possibility of a production. And I think it's because everything had to be approved, right? Like even Andrew Lloyd Webber and his team had to approve whether this thing was going to happen or not. And so it was all very hypothetical. It was all very like speculative, right? And so I think that also took the sort of pressure off of it, that like, okay, well, this might not happen, so we can really be far-fetched here, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my introduction to you all, and it's funny kind of now looking back so many years from this point, but your original casting post that made it on, the bulletin boards, or what got sent to me and what had a lot of like viral moments from a couple of the theater influencers who were like, we're looking for a drag old Deuteronomy, or we're looking for I'm assuming that's what you all wrote out for this workshop. And that's what piqued my interest. I actually reached out to Bill at that time of just, I don't know what you all are doing, but I want to know more. And I remember his response back to me was, hey, this is really early and it's really just an idea. Right. And so like, we'll talk if we get closer. And then, obviously when they announced the pact, we were full steam ahead on doing a bunch of stuff together. But when you were writing that, how do you even draft those casting calls when it is so vague at that point?
Yeah, I mean, we were also just meeting the characters, in a new way, and I don't mean that like meeting them in the traditional form. I mean like we were really collaborating with our entire team, right? Because we were working with our choreographers and with our gender consultant. And Bill, and then Jalen also, came in a little later. And that's a whole different story. But like, even just like collaborating with them and being like, who is old Deuteronomy? Who is Gus the theater cat? And we really had to figure out like one by one, because there was no, even that early draft of the character descriptions, it was all speculative. It was like, well, maybe this, maybe that. But those things changed drastically. Like step by step. I mean, we had several workshops that first year alone. So even our like auditions process were very confusing because people didn't know what they were coming in for.
Yeah.
They didn't.
I think with each workshop, they learned more and more. So it was like, oh, we found out Grisabella would be this, and Monk and Strap would be this, or this is what we desire. And then when it got to the next one, it was like, oh, let's include dance. And these are how these people dance, right? And speaking with Amaro and Arturo really helped us, like the movement of it all really come together with like that self-discovery.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure having so many workshops and you being a part of that, you get to see the iterations of that. And it's got to be, wildly challenging on one hand, because you're taking something that's so well known and has such a place in lore and history and years of casting a certain type of individual for it, and almost turning it completely upside down at points, but still staying so true to the source material in a sense. So was there what was the moment where maybe it felt a little bit like, oh, I think we've got this one nailed, or we've got to completely change this one? I mean,
but like it's like we tried so many different, like computations, right, of like each character. I mean, we also learned a lot by meeting people through open-ended audition processes, where like we wouldn't even give them a role. We would just say like, prep this song like generally, and we'll see what it's like in the room with you, right? But like, when we auditioned like Sidney James Harcourt, right? And he walks in and we're like, that's Rum Tum Tugger.
Yeah.
Right. And then,
totally.
And then even just like being like hearing Sidney's story about like what ballroom means to him, and how when he was like 18 years old in New York City, being embraced by, people in the ballroom community as a young queer, person of color in the city. Like, it was just like these stories behind these people. And that's when we started like sort of seeing certain parts of it more clearly, right? Like even when we had these open submission portals for like a year or two, right? And like that's how we met Robert Silk Mason, who like submitted through our open call, and then we bring in and we're like, they need to be in the show, like somehow, right? And they immediately became Mr. Mistopheles from the beginning. I mean, just like from like the first year. So like there were moments where like we like locked in on people so quickly and they remained in their roles, but then some of them were very tricky. Like finding a Skimbleshanks was very hard. Or like even, you know, Sujotta was part of like what the sessions of like finding Buster Jones.
Yeah.
Right. And like even like us ideating of like who's Gus the theater cat when we have Andre de Shields like as old Deuteronomy. Like how do we think like head to head? And I meditated over that and prayed over it so much because there's a huge responsibility, right? It's like this like casting choice that hinges, like the show hinges on that in a lot of ways. And there's a lot of story there, but you know, it's just, yeah.
Yeah, and it's just like when he talks about Sydney and he talks about Silk, we also talk about Primo, one of our ballroom dancers who was an assistant to the choreographers at the time. And I think one day we were sitting down and we were like, what about Primo? You know, like, what about him? And then it was also, you know, when Victor talks about Gus the theater cat, it's I love to tell this story because it's my first experience in like a ballroom setting, like going to a ball and, you know, and finding people that way and just researching that way, but also going to the ball specifically to find Junior LaBeija, right? And going to his house and saying, hi, you know, this is who I am. I know that, you know, I'm not in this world, but, you know, would love to connect with you and find Junior and had conversations to, you know, have him be a part of the process.
Because Junior does not have an agent or a manager, but Junior has community in front of him.
Yeah.
And like we had to move, you know, through that in order to get the call, right? Like even just to be like, can we give him a call to like talk to him? And even that in itself was like a whole, you know, process where like we emailed Bill and Jalen the pitch and we're like, you know, we think, you know, I remember reading a Hollywood Reporter article on Junior LaBeija from like 2017. And when I read that and I was just doing research, you know, I remember thinking like, I think this is a great possibility as an idea. And we pitched Junior LaBeija alongside Ken Page for Gus the Theater Cat. Right, because either like for us, I'm like there's two different lineages here, right? We can pair Andre with, you know, his like his colleague in theater history, right? Or we can meet Junior LaBeija, and so we invited him into a workshop, and we're like, you can come witness, you can come observe, we don't need a commitment from you. And he came and he watched and he participated. And then we made him an offer and we said, now that you kind of know what it's about, you know, do you want to join us?
Yeah.
And that's when he was like, yes. And we were like, great. We figured that puzzle out, right? And
I'm curious how many more were like Junior in the sense that, you know, there's the theater world has a process, like, you know, there's an audition process and there's agents and there's equity and there's all this like more standardized version. The ballroom community doesn't have that for this space. And so how much of that was going, you know, to balls, like you said, you went to a ball, or going and, you know, talking to, you know, networking within that own community to find people versus some of them kind of just being part of the open call?
Yeah, I think they do have a system. It may not be like ours, but they do have a system of community where they connect with each other. I think just using Junior as an example into what Victor was saying, that I had to call someone, Jeffrey LaBeija, and he had a conversation with me because he said, hey, I want to, you know, make sure it's like basically legit, but also that he's taken care of. So I am his manager in this moment in a way, you know, and me forming a relationship with that person to, you know, have him come in the room. But with open calls, I think it's also like just having certain conversations. We really relied on Arturo and Amari, to connect us with folks. I know we posted a lot on Instagram. I think it's just like getting out into the community I think is what we were so great at, and really connecting with this ballroom community to say, hey, I remember people were hesitant. It's like, hey, hop on the phone. Let me tell you what this is. Because it was a really, I think, hesitance of like, we don't want to ballroom to be told in a way that isn't true, that is, that
Extractive.
is like commercial, in the commercial, we want it to be in truth, right? So having those communications with those folks, I think really helped, and I think they really appreciated that we were so open about it.
And I think I also want to add that one of the original ethos in all this was like, so Bill Rauch has a history working and creating Cornerstone Theater Company. And he created that right out of like undergrad when he was like at Harvard, like, years ago, right? And Cornerstone Theater Company has this really specific methodology of how they work in community to create theater, processes. And for me, that was really pertinent to this because I was like, okay, this is part of Bill's legacy, right? Like what he's actually, how he started in theater. And so for us, I was like, we're going to model our process a lot after Cornerstone Theater methodology. And what that means for us at the beginning was like a ballroom community gets invited first and foremost. Before we even talk to any agent or manager or any theater person, we're going to have an open call exclusively and only for ballroom. And so that initial posting that you saw on Instagram, from like years ago, 4 years ago, we said it like it was just part of it. We were like, we invite the ballroom community first. You are the first to be seen. We're having an open call. We want to meet you and see you first, because I think that priority actually really matters. They're not a sort of like afterthought. Yeah. It's like, no, our process actually is rooted on prioritizing you and seeing you first, because then we can start to figure out where do we scaffold and support with Broadway, off-Broadway talent, right? But that was always part of the process for us. It's like, how do we honor and prioritize ballroom community in this entire casting process?
Yeah, it's great to hear that too, because it's like, we now have the benefit of seeing what this has turned into. And like you see the PAC output and now the Broadway output, and you see that incredible, what's the right word? Like just acknowledgement and honoring the ballroom community and like moments of happiness and all those pieces. And you knew that had to be rooted in the community really helping, like really frame a lot of that. And so hearing that that's the way you kind of started is fascinating, because it's like a big part of how that really gets to that point and allows you to build what you were able to build. So I want to go fast forward to the PAC now. So now you're rounding out, an actual full-on stage ticket sales beyond the workshop. What were some of the like challenges of doing that? What were some of the the last couple pieces you had to put together to kind of build this hit out at the PAC?
Sujotta, what were the final roles that I feel like we were like left to cast? I remember Skimbleshanks was towards the end, and we were like, that was like one of the final roles, and figuring that one out was very
Buster for Jones.
Buster for Jones. Who else? Because I feel like there was some that we just had in the pocket from the get-go, right? Like Mistopheles, Tugger, Victoria was always Victoria.
Yeah.
I feel like Mungo Jerry and Rumpelteazer were pretty early on. Even having a conversation with Jonathan Burke, where we're like, I remember we called his agent and we're like, we know that he probably wouldn't do ensemble, right? Because of his status, but this is such a magical, beautiful, interesting, unique project that we absolutely want him part of it. But can we talk to him about what this might be, right? And then like Jalen jumped on the phone with Jonathan, and then we had to sort of like have a very like personal conversation, right? For him to say yes, right? Because we still have like this sort of status distinguishing, and Cats is hard because there aren't that many principal roles. Yeah. It's very much an ensemble based production. And, you know, like, sure, you have memory, right? Like as a featured song, but, and then every sort of cat has their like featured moment in a way. But in terms of contracts, right, it's mostly ensemble contracts.
Completely.
Yeah. And so that's also a hard negotiation in terms of like how we approached talent. But yeah, I think like even finding Emma Sophia from a tape was like a fascinating like process, because her tape was just batshit crazy, and it was perfect for us. It was perfect for us.
She is the only person that's been on this show twice, and she's about to be the only person on the show probably 3 times.
Wow.
Because she actually auditioned for the 2016 revival, and her audition story for that, if you've not heard it, it's the first episode I did with her, is fascinating.
Wow.
Hilarious.
Wow.
She went all out for that as well, and did not book it. Did not book it, and then told me about her crazy Skimbleshanks audition for you all, which is amazing and hilarious, and
it's on her Instagram for anybody who wants to look at it. Yeah. No, she posted it.
It is fantastic.
But I think to answer your question, it's like one of the things that we learned during the run was how difficult of a show it is on a performer's body. And we, you know, it got extended 3 times at PAC, but we had to add emergency like cast members towards the tail end of that, and we're also experiencing that on Broadway too.
Yeah. Yeah, it's such a physical show. I mean, the cats. I never know what to call it, because there's Jellicle Ball and then there's the cat's costume cats. That is similar, very physically demanding. They're dancing the whole time, but the Jellicle Ball, even though there's not as much of that, full on dance at all moments and all times on the stage, there is so much dancing happening and so many other moments added that there's, the drops are, I can't even imagine the toll that takes on your body as you're doing it. And just something that looks so second nature to these professionals, but it's like, again, physically, cannot believe it. So we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be back for more of The Wrong Cat Died. I only have one other question about the PAC before I want to go talk a little bit about some of the Broadway changes. At the PAC, one thing that that I'm curious about is, you have a couple, like you have what I would call the core characters, but as you said, there's a lot of, it's an ensemble show, like at its core. And so there are a few that you have that have really important symbolic roles that fit part of the storytelling that was in Cats from the get-go. And then you have a few others that there are some of the ensemble characters that you could have picked different cats names or just character types. So how much did you go back into like the 3 words that they gave the cats and some of the like true historical storytelling of cats to figure out some of those other characters that maybe aren't as clearly defined as like Skimbleshanks or, some of the other ones where they have a very clear moment in the show?
Sujotta, you want to jump in or you want me to jump in?
You go ahead.
Because there's such a long list of like available roles, right? But even in our production, we had to sort of limit and find what is truly our ensemble. But in a way, again, meeting certain people, right? Like even meeting Teddy Wilson, and being like, there were certain people where we're just like, we want them in the show, and so how can we find a way to integrate them? Right, what role can they then start to take on and build and grow? And so there were a lot of performers that we just like met and fell in love with as a creative team, that we were just like, come in and we'll find a place for you, and then it was like trying different roles or trying different renditions. But yeah, we worked really collaboratively. I think I was listening to a panel that Omari and Arturo were on, I think at the Guggenheim, and they were just talking about how involved they were in this process versus, how maybe uninvolved they might be in other processes. And it's true, like as casting directors, our job is to push along the conversation of casting the show at all times. And we bug everybody about it all the time. Like it doesn't end, right? And it was a continuous conversation for years. And so what they were telling in that panel was like they would receive, 70 emails a day, right? Where we were just like throwing out ideas and sort of just like challenging them back and forth, like Bill, Jalen, us, Omari, Arturo, our gender consultant, and it's just taking this Play-Doh called cats and seeing how malleable it is, because then there's the idea of categories too, right? Like, what if we were to cast a certain person, then what category do they play in a ballroom setting, right? And so even just like finding Bustopher Jones was very much like, okay, well then the category is body,
Yeah.
right? Or like for McCavity, the category is labels, right? So then how do we find somebody that brings that kind of status, right, et cetera? Yeah.
And to echo what you're saying, Victor, and to talk about a little bit more about like the challenges, as we all know in musicals, we have the music department, we have the dance department, and we have the directors, right?
I know, I forgot about William, but William was there too.
Yeah.
Like in the emails.
And a fun fact is William is a part, I believe a part of the original Cats, or his connections with that. And so he was very instrumental in saying like, hey, we have to keep this sound. So another thing aside from dance was music, and saying who can sing these parts and how can we still have the best show and the most truthful show while keeping the sounds, right? And I feel one thing that I love about this team, that they really allowed casting to be a part of all of these conversations, and really allowed us to, sometimes they say casting is very administrative, but they allowed us to be very creative in this process and give our 2 cents of what we thought and how it should be shaped. Really when it came around these roles, right? Because I remember a conversation we were having where we wanted to actually have the audience really see this group of people and say, I see me. So just thinking about Bustopher Jones, especially me being a plus size woman, saying, oh, like I could do this. You know what I'm saying? And I can have this confidence, and I can X, Y, and Z. So I think the challenge was like a beautiful challenge. I would like to say that, a beautiful challenge, to be able to just have these group of people that look totally different and sound totally different, and say, we need you to be a part of this and we'll make it work for you, right? Because sometimes it's like we have to make it work for the production, but it's like, no, we're going to make it work for you because we really want to invest in you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think there's just to add to the vocal requirements of the show, right? Where it's like there are certain moments where we're just playing, we're sort of figuring out this like algebra problem of like vocal parts, right? Because then if we cast this role with this kind of vocal, this vocal range over here, then that means we got to do this over there, right? So it was a lot of like, we don't know Y until we figure out X, and we certainly don't know Z, right? and it was just a constant sort of like puzzle making of a process between every single collaborator. And that's what I really appreciated about our creative team, was that everybody was just game to try to figure it out. There were no egos. Everybody was so hands-on and so collaborative. We would meet so often on Zoom to just like, again, challenge these questions of like, okay, so if we cast this person, then that allows us to cast this other person over here, right? And truly, like, even after the pack, we learned so much, right? And so then even just breaking it open after pack and being like, okay, we have this other opportunity. What can we do to change a few things up here? You know, and that became a different process.
Just to highlight, I think one of our favorite moments, and Victor, sometimes you speak on this, is when we have to put all the headshots down and say, okay, these are Bustopher Jones, these are Demeters, these are Jenny Annie Dots, And it was so tough because we had so many great people. But like, we have to form an ensemble. But we would have late nights. And like, I think Bill would say sometimes, well,
I know. There was like this one day where we were in sessions from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. And Sujotta and I, obviously, they're early, right? So we're there since like 7 a.m. And we're there till 9 p.m. looking at headshots. They're literally scattered all over the studio floor. Like, we're not kidding. Like, people use tables. No, we had so many headshots as like possible candidates that we like had to use the entire floor of the studio. And we would just walk around and just leave Post-it notes on shots. And then at the end, it's like getting closer to 10 and Jalen's there and Bill's there and Omari and everybody, William. And then we just can't wrap our heads around the sort of formula. And Bill's just like, let's order pizza. I'm excited. Because I think, like, obviously for him, it's like exciting to have this problem. But we're all looking at him like, Bill, we want to go home. Like, I think this was such a delight for him because he's had such a vision for this question that's been inside of him for decades. Right? Like, what does Cats look like if you break it open in such a queer way? And I think a lot of us, right, like even just like as a queer individual myself, I'm just like, that is such a cool project, right? Like the project of like queering something, of holding something to the light in a new way, even particularly during, politically turmoil, like really just like interesting times, right? Like the idea and the challenge, the creative challenge of telling ourselves as a team, like we want to cast as many trans women as possible. Like we want to give them employment. I think that is such a radical project, right? And even just like we want to have a very out loud queer cast. That in itself is a radical project. And so I think all of us were fueled by that, but I think the person that's been most fueled by that is Bill Rausch. And that's such a beautiful like thing because like I love his enthusiasm because it comes from such a really beautiful, deep spirit, sort of like profound well there. And I think he's just I'm always just so grateful for him taking this idea and bringing us all into it to figure it out with him.
Yeah. I love hearing that. I mean, I'm a little fascinated by Sujotta, you saying the like administrative view of casting because like I'm not in this space and I just can't imagine it not being as collaborative as you all have been because it feels like it has to, and maybe that's unique to this show because of how groundbreaking it is in many cases. But hearing you all talk about this, I think one thing like my next question was going to be about representation, and this show does an incredible job of representing groups that aren't always represented, especially on a Broadway stage. And so, as you obviously had people that came in and you're just like, this is the person, we got to figure out how to put them in the show. But how much did you go seek out for certain roles of like, we want to have maybe a trans woman here, or we want to have somebody for this particular role? Because that actually happens in regular Cats a lot, or the other Cats. I don't want to call it regular. They're not. There's not one or the other. But the other Cats, they look for Bon Ballerina a taller woman for that, and so there's some things where they have like they've placed those things, but you almost had a blank slate that you could play with. So I'd love to hear a little bit about how you approached that part of it.
Yeah, I think it all started to what Victor was saying, conversation of like Jalen and Bill and their ideas of what this world could be. And for us asking the questions of like, I think we went role by role to say like, hey, how do you envision these people in the world? And then it's taking that information and then for us coming back and saying, we think this person would be great. And I think, and I know casting's job is also to bring people to the table that you would never think of, just to open the mind of saying like, oh, I never thought of it that way. So I think it was like taking what we had and with the music, with the script, and with the director's ideas, with the choreographer's ideas, and pulling names, right? And saying like, and just throwing names at the wall. Sometimes that's how we start. Let's just throw names on the list and then narrowing it down and saying, oh, this would be dope. This would be exciting to see this person with this person, right? So I think that was a little bit of it, Victor.
Yeah, and it's like even just like so like even take Leomi from Macavity. I mean, Leomi was on our minds since the beginning of this project. You know, we initially approached her during one of the first development workshops, right? But back then she didn't know what this was, right? And then by the time we had the pack production, you know, we invited her to come see it, and she saw it, and so then she became familiar with it. And so once Broadway was announced, we reapproached her, you know, and we invited her into the studio. We met her. We got to see what she could do, right? And but it, you know, even just like coming up with a list from Macavity, like we still have lists of like really interesting ideas of people that we might try in the future, right? Should this continue and run. And that's the cool part about it, right? It's like that even like when certain people are like, okay, I think I'm done with the show and should it run for a year or more, then there are still additional surprises and permutations that are completely possible that would not follow the same model that we've already laid down. And I think that to me is like very exciting, right? Because it becomes a kaleidoscope of bodies, of possibilities. And to chime in on the process of casting, I am actually a huge, you know, advocate of the idea that casting really should be seen more as an art form. I really do think that we have failed our field by not thinking about it as a design process. I think it is incredibly curatorial. I think not only sure do we have the relationships to, you know, the agencies and managements in the traditional ways, but the way that we think about inhabiting a world is a design process, right? And for me, it was such a gift to have a team that was so welcoming to that and just looked to us to lead these conversations, to really be like, what do you guys think? And what do you have for us? Who should we see? You know, and they still honor that, and they still approach us in that way. And they're so, the invitation is so open to be like, okay, who do you think we should look at for Macavity? Right? And we're like, fantastic, like such a gift, right? And so I think having that kind of relationship, it's not that it's not traditional, it's that I think it's actually hidden. And I think that people don't get to see the kind of collaboration, the intimate kind of collaboration that happens between a director and a casting director. Yeah. Because it happens from the beginning and it happens in the background, and then we do our jobs, and when we do it well, it remains invisible, right? But when we F up, it becomes a controversy, right? Yeah. And it becomes a very loud one that could potentially close a show. And we were very mindful of that, right? We were very mindful of like, we don't want to make many mistakes here. And we want to approach this in such a creatively abundant, joyful way. And so then that was part of our process the entire way through. And I just think that I'm very proud of the work that we've done, Sujotta and I, in this process. I'm very proud of our team. And I'm very proud of the ensemble that we've put together, because I think there's a lot of magic happening on that stage, because particularly of the performers that we curated into the process.
Yeah, it's so true, because I've definitely seen some Broadway shows. I won't name names, but there's been a handful where I've seen multiple different versions with different cast members performing the same role as they've moved people in and out. And at times they're different shows. I mean, they're vastly different experiences. And I think that's a part of it, of you all having to be a voice in that, because your decision impacts a lot of the rest of the decisions that impacts some of the other stuff. And, you know, like even some of the adjustments between the pack and Broadway, like adding Leomi, the Macavity story kind of adjusted and changed in that. And like, you know, I noticed that as someone who has always been fascinated by the McCavity story in general. But it's like you knowing her background and all that, like that's such a beautiful moment. If it wasn't her, that storyline probably looks different, depending on what you do. But one thing that you all did that I loved, and I want to hear a little bit about the decision to do this, because it feels uncommon or not. I just haven't seen it elsewhere. But really early on, before the Broadway opening, you all posted on social media, like, here's how we casted these 3 distinct pillars. And you were very open with that process and sharing kind of the how you went about it and the mindset there, which I loved because I thought it was an insight into the process that we don't normally get. So how did y'all make the decision to make that a public facing, here's part of our process?
I think it has a lot to do with a few different things. And first of all, I think that we in casting have to be better about how we tell our story, right? And I think that there's a sort of misunderstanding a lot about what we do and maybe a mystery about what casting does. I think people think very generally about our jobs and our roles. And there's a sort of gatekeeping quality to it, but really if we shift that to curatorial, I think it actually makes more sense. And so, even with Sujotta in this process, I early on, I was just like, I want us to be able to tell the story of how we've done this, because there's a lot of intention here. And it's not very different than any other show. We approach all our shows uniquely with their own strategies. And sure, no 2 shows are alike, but that doesn't take away from the creative, approach that we have with any show. And so first, I think the priority was we got to tell our story a little bit better, right? And then second of all, it was really sharing, just like, even Sujotta and I, as individuals, the way that we approach our work is different than maybe other offices approach their work. And, the way that we think about legacy is different. And the way that we think about our elders, is different. Like, I come from a culture where, respecting and honoring your elder is just common sense. You take care of your people, particularly as they age. And I think that for me became a design element in this, where I was like, we're going to really, really try to have elders. I mean, Sujotta, remember early on when like Bill was like, who are all these sort of like folks that are in that age category?
Yeah.
And they're performing and are people of color. And I remember emailing Bill and saying, Bill, they're dead. And he was like, what do you mean? People over their 60. I'm like, Bill, like they, artists who were Black and Latino in New York City, a lot of them died during the AIDS epidemic. It really annihilated our community and like took away so many of our elders who would have been so influential to us today, right? But we've had that sort of footprint erased. And so even finding someone like Junior LaBeija was a miracle, and we were told like, he's not old enough. And we're like, that's what you get, that he's a perfect performer for this role, but we're not going to find an 85-year-old, 97-year-old, performer because it's Andre DeShields. Like, and then where are they? Where are the rest of them? Where they're not working. The community, the entertainment community hasn't taken care of them. They haven't been able to sustain a career. There hasn't been enough opportunities for them to stay in the game. Either that or they were just annihilated by this virus, right? And so to me, it's just like, thinking about all this was just part of our thinking every single day of this process. And I really wanted to just communicate, even in the most simplest terms, like how that influenced our work. Because I really also would like people to like go out there, like Sujotta and I are huge advocates of like the casting needs to have a category at the Tonys.
Yeah.
and we've been talking about this, and our casting community has been talking about this for decades. We have a category in the Emmys, we have a category now in the Oscars, and all that's missing is the Tonys. And I hope that our community continues to advocate for this collectively. And for us as young people in this industry, as we're coming in this new generation, I think it's our duty to tell our story better.
Yeah. I think you all, I mean, I love the transparency and the way you're, went about it. And I think it's really great for also the audiences to hear, and for people that are coming to the show to get a peek behind the scenes of like all that goes into it. So,
yeah. And just speaking, I would like to speak a little bit about what Victor said about our elders. And when it comes to Andre DeShield and Junior LaBeija, you have these two icons, one from musical theater and one from the ballroom scene. So it's like when you talk about casting, that's the intentional thing. When we say like, hey, it's this guy, it's this person named Junior LaBeija that we think would be great in this role. It's like, hey, how do we bridge both of these worlds together, right? And I remember sitting in a workshop and just listening to both of them speak about their experiences. If you ever get to speak to Junior and what Cats means to him, he's like, this is my life. Cats is my life. If you think about every cat, that's a person that has been in my life, right? And the journey that we have had, but also to have these two leaders guide this company is a beautiful thing. And it tells I think a bigger story than if we cast a musical theater person as Gus. Not saying that they couldn't do it, not saying that it wouldn't be magical, but I feel like it's a statement when you have these two people leading the ship.
Sujotta, remember when we had the phone call with Junior, our first phone call with him, the two of us, and when we were just telling him about the project, and Junior said to us, well, we're like cats too. He's like, people are like cats. He's like, when we're young, everybody loves us. Everybody wants to touch us and pet us and welcome us. He's like, but as we grow older and older, we're thrown out into the street and forgotten. And he's like, I feel like that cat, and he's just like, I appreciate this invitation and to be seen, right? Because I think that's what it really is about. Like, now people get to see these two icons, right, together on stage. I think in a legendary way where it's like, it reminds us, even to see the spectrum of ages from like people in their early 20s all the way to, seeing, Junior and Andre on that stage, even followed by Ken Ard, right, who was in the original 1982 production playing McCavity. So all of that to us is very intertwined into how strategic we were about this work.
You all have nailed it, and you will continue, because I'm sure hopefully this runs for way more than 1 year and many, many, many years.
I hope so. People go out there and see it, please.
Iteration. So we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be back for more of The Wrong Cat Died. Okay, let's do some quick rapid fire for cats. So if you could perform as one of the cats in the Jellicle Ball, who do you want to perform as?
Ooh.
I feel like I would be Demeter, because she's just like up there having so much fun. It's BB, right? BB?
Yeah. BB.
Like, I just feel like BB is just having a ball, and I'm just like, that looks like a fun track. Like, maybe I don't got to do too much dancing. I just got to sing.
Yeah.
I think I would be DJ Grindelbaum, because Ken Art, let me tell you, he gives a performance, and if I could give a performance like that, I just love him up there in that DJ booth.
Yeah, he's having
jamming,
a blast.
Who
are your favorite characters in the show, and then who are your not least favorite characters, but if like I always think about this from a family, like which from a personality standpoint, which one's going to bug you a little bit, and which one is going to be like your best friend?
Ooh, I think I love Munkenstrap. I just love the stage presence. I love the control. I love the call and response. I just love all, and the costumes. Amazing. Victor, I'll let you say your thing.
Mungo Jerry and Rumble Teaser bug the shit out of me, and I love my twins, but I'm just saying, just the having things stolen, I just be like annoyed by it. But I think my what was the favorite, or who was
who would be the one you'd like to hang out with?
I think the one that struck me very differently this time around on Broadway that I really really appreciated was Syllabub.
Yeah,
I just really was just like, I don't know why, even just like I watched it recently, like 2 weeks ago again. And I was just sitting in the audience, and I just paid a lot of attention to Syllabub. And I was just like, I think it's having like Teddy being perceived as like the youngest on stage in a way, but and particularly the moment of happiness moment, and the sort of like allegiance that they have in like seeing Grisabella. I think for me, it was just like, wow, that's such a beautiful story there, that I feel like there could be a whole new musical about Syllabub after this.
Yeah.
And totally. I would be so profoundly into it. You know.
Okay, favorite song in the show?
Ooh, it's so many.
Mine is Mistopheles. It's always just in my head. Yeah.
Mr. Mistopheles. Yeah. I think that's a jam. That is a jam. That makes you get out of your seat and rock. I can
it's just
get
got like a groove to it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
If you could be in one of the houses that you've added to Jellicle Ball, so House of Dots, House of Glamour, House of
I would be House of Dots, just because my Latina queen, Jenny Any Dots, easy.
Okay.
I think I would be with McCavity.
House of McCavity. Okay.
A little dangerous.
Yeah.
A little dangerous and feisty.
And then the $1 million question, my show centers around that. I don't think Grisabella is the right Jellicle choice. I think this version of it makes it a lot harder to make that argument, because I think you all have changed what the Heaviside layer looks like here, but I want to hear who is your Jellicle choice and why.
I think, I've been thinking about this whole time. I think Syllabub for me, because that's my heart cat. Because I, as that cat, I relate more to that cat of being loving, and they always wanted to help Grisabella and allow her to see her beauty, and me as a person is like that. So I would say Syllabub.
Love it.
I would say Munkenstrap for me, because I'm like, man, our Munkenstrap is doing so much work up there. Like, being the master of ceremonies is a lot of work, and the person who's doing the most welcoming and hosting deserves to have a moment. So I love it. I would pick our Dudney.
I love you, Dudney.
It's so fun. So Dudney's episode will have probably just come out by the time this one's come out. And I got Dudney to do a chant for this podcast, which was super fun.
That's dope.
But I'm also fascinated because, like, I loved how Dudney approached the Old Deuteronomy chant, and he started telling the story about how, like, Andre's just like working up there, just he has to do this to just keep going and going and going for that whole moment.
There's I think in our show reports where it's like sometimes he goes longer.
Yeah. I was like, that is a workout almost in itself to be able to do that. So I love that. And then Syllabub, I was laughing because I got a message from former guests who had not seen the Jellicle Ball at this point, and they're like, can you tell me what the Syllabub story is in the Jellicle Ball? Because Syllabub got a lot of votes when I did the gold carpet, and in general,
I noticed that.
I was like, you got to come see, because Teddy does a lot of work, and there is a reason for that. And I was like, I told this person, like, you're gonna love how the Syllabub story is approached here, but it's so different than the other cats. Right. Syllabub's character is very ensemble, and sometimes kind of can blur in the background if you're not really paying attention.
Right.
Okay, well, this has been so fun, fascinating to hear how you all approach this. I loved hearing this, and I appreciate you all answering all the questions. So How can people stay in touch with you both and casting and all you're doing?
Yeah, so you can find us on Xcasting NYC on Instagram, and then individually, I'm at Victor V, and Sujotta is at
Sujotta.
Both on Instagram. Great. Okay. We will link all that as well as how to get tickets. The Jellicle Ball's nominated for a bunch of stuff. Hopefully soon for a casting in the Tonys. I love that idea for that to be a future category.
Yeah. And also we're gonna be looking for more additional people in the next few weeks, and so we'll put that out on Instagram.
Ooh, okay.
Just to start meeting some additional performers for future casting.
That's awesome. So if you're ready to go, if you're ready to be in the show, I have no skills to provide you all for that. So
you could be our DJ.
Yeah, you can be the DJ.
I can't be the DJ because
you got to understudy. You know, the magic about Ken is that Ken, like, that's the other thing we didn't even talk about is like how all these people internally cover each other, and so maybe that's another. But that was its own. That's all calculus.
Can I tell Ken's story really quick?
Yeah.
And we can piece it together. So Ken, I remember I went to, I think I went to the show for the second time or for closing or something. And I was walking down the steps.
You mean at PAC, right?
Yes, PAC. Thank you. And I just started, I don't know how I started talking to this gentleman. I think someone said, hey, Sujotta, he was in the original Cats. And he was just saying how he said he would have never went downtown again because he used to live down there during 9/11. And so he was just saying, like, I don't know about coming because I have a lot of, feelings about this place. And so he was saying that how he went to the story and how it meant to him, what it meant to him, and that he was just so thankful for this story. I remember when we started talking about Broadway, he just had emailed. So this is a story to all the actors to say, shoot your shot.
Yeah.
Shoot your shot, because he sent an email to Bill, and then Bill connected us with him, and we had him, we started the process to see him dance, to hear him sing on the music, and he just became the obvious choice, right?
Yeah.
So I just say all to Ken's story is that he just has a beautiful story of what this show means to him, what downtown means to him, and the story of like, hey, I need to advocate for myself. So I'm going to email. So to anybody listening, please shoot your shot.
Definitely. We did an episode with Ken, and I loved, he talked about how he had such difficult and challenging memories of that, of being downtown, of just like of his life, and how going to the PAC really, replaced it with a beautiful and positive memory, and how it was like really transformational for him. So, I can't do anything Ken does though. I can't dance any of the Jellicle Ball or walk the executive. What I can do is I could guest judge for y'all one day. That's probably the extent of what I'd be able to do.
Let us know.
So that will be it. But I love that this is going out. So by the time this comes out, hopefully it will be shortly after. You all will be posting about more people that can apply. So shoot your shot. Come be part of the Jellicle Ball. It's an amazing show. And if you can't do it, just come see it, and come see it a bunch. I know a few people have been 10 plus times already, and it's a beautiful, beautiful show, and it's so energetic and fun that you can go back many, many times.
It will definitely make you happy.
Yes.
Amen. Well, thank you both for coming on. It was so fun to have you.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
And thanks everyone else for listening to this episode of The Wrong Cat Died, the podcast breakdown the cast feed. To follow along, you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or any other podcast. Follow us on social media at The Wrong Cat Died, or check our website, thewrongcatdied.com.